I never really know how to start off my videos. I feel like every time I always just go, hey guys, but that's pretty much what everybody does. So, I don't know, I need to figure out a new way to start my videos. But anyways, it's been a long time since I filmed. It's been like 4 weeks, but I've pretty much just been slacking. And in the last 2 weeks, I've been getting ready to move to a new state and start my new job. I've been looking at apartments and furniture shopping, so that's been keeping me busy, but I finally decided to get back focused and make a new video for you guys. And yeah, I know what I'm wearing is like very busy and colorful. Like this is just a loud background with all these colors, but whatever, we're just gonna be bright today, okay? So yeah, today's video I'm just going to be talking about my experience working as a patient care tech, and I'll try to give you guys some advice if you're thinking about doing the same thing, especially if you're in nursing school too. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, first things first, what is a tech? There are several different names for it. It really just depends on, I guess, what state you live in and what facility you're working in. So you can be a patient care technician, a patient support technician, I guess like a CNA is the same thing too, like a certified nurse assistant. So it really just depends. But the hospital that I worked in, I was a patient support technician too. And so basically if you have 2 after your title, you are either like in nursing school or you have a previous degree or just something to like get you up to that higher rank. And I did get paid a little bit more, not a lot more, than just your regular patient support technician. And of course, for short, we just say tech or PST or PCT, CNA, nurse assistant, whatever. So when I was working as a tech, I was on the intermediate intensive care unit, which is also called the step down unit, and also for short, we would just say double ICU or double I. So on the double ICU, you're not necessarily bad off enough to be on the ICU. Like you still need round-the-clock attention and care, and you need to be monitored 24/7 basically, but you're not ready to go home yet, and you're not sick enough to be in the ICU, so it really is an intermediate level. And on this floor, you would see pretty much everything. Like you can see a lot of things. Like I'm not even gonna lie, I learned a good bit and saw some new things, so that was a good experience outside of nursing school. It really reminded me of like my med-surg clinicals. You have patients that were going to surgery or just having a lot of studies done. A lot of these patients were high risk for falls. They had to be repositioned every 2 hours, of course, because they couldn't do it themselves. They were at risk for skin breakdown and pressure ulcers. Some of the patients were recovering from strokes or they had to go dialysis, so we saw a lot. Another important thing to know about working as a tech would be your responsibilities. So the tech is basically going to assist the nurse and the patients in any way that they can. Your main responsibilities will be like I's and O's, so monitoring what your patient eats and drinks, monitoring how much urine they put out, how often they go to the bathroom, having a bowel movement. So you're going to document all of that, you're going to do charting, so that's great experience too, because in nursing school you really don't get to chart on your own. Techs are also responsible for getting blood sugars, so you really do have to keep up with your patients if they're AC, HS, or if they're Q6 or Q4, Q1 hour, whatever. You have to make sure you keep up with that and get those blood sugars and report it to the nurse when you do get their level. On some floors, techs are responsible for getting blood draws, so there's my phone. Hey, I'm gonna call you back. I'm filming.
You filming?
Yeah, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hey, what's happening?
Alright, I'll call you back in like 5 minutes.
Nice.
Alright, bye. What was I even saying? Oh, that was my brother. But anyways, on some floors, the techs are responsible for blood draws, but on the floor that I worked on, we actually had phlebotomists that would come up and get blood whenever they needed to, so I never had to stick my patients myself, which was great. So it really just depends on what floor you're on. And on the floor that I worked on, we did vital signs every 4 hours. So that's another responsibility that you have as a tech. Another thing that I was responsible for was helping patients whenever it was time for them to transfer to another floor or if they were just getting discharged to go home. So I would have to help pack up their things and like wheel them out to their car. In addition to helping patients with discharge, you also have to help admitting patients, so you just help out with your nurse with that. You're also responsible for bed baths, so yeah, get ready for that, okay? That was, hey, it's just something you have to do. I was pretty nervous to do them by myself because when I was in nursing school, I honestly did not do a lot. I get a bed bath like my first day of clinical in nursing school, my first semester, and after that, I would just like help out a little bit. I never really gave one on my own. So when I started working as a tech, my preceptor and I did a few together, and then when it was time for me to go on my own, I had to do it by myself, of course. And it's just one of those things you just have to do. You kind of get used to it, but it's kind of intimidating at first. But you have to be professional. You know, these people need help, so you just kind of do it. And I really think that the best way to get through it is to just kind of talk to your patient about other things like what they like to do or their family, so that way you're not really focusing too much on just being nervous or weirded out or whatever. So just remember to remain professional. Your preceptor will teach you how to do everything, so you'll be fine. Just do it. Techs are also responsible for changing the linen, so you're going to make sure your patient gets bathed and fresh sheets. You also have to make sure you turn your patients every 2 hours, like I said. Another important responsibility that techs have is called rounding. So pretty much every hour you want to go check on your patients. You're going to knock on their room and go in there and just check on them, and you're going to chart. You're going to put down what they're doing, whether or not you helped them with anything, whether or not you changed their sheets, gave them a bed bath, whether or not they're eating. You just want to go in there every single hour, or at least every 2 hours depending on your facility, and just make sure you chart on them so that there's something in there to record what they were doing at that time. Maybe your patient needs help with eating, so you can help feed them, or maybe the nurse will just ask you to help them do something, so just go help your nurse. And if you're in nursing school, really try to make friends with your nurse, because a lot of times they'll call you in to show you how to do cool things, or they'll just explain things to you and you can just learn more things. So that's a great experience that you can get outside of clinical. And I just want to give you a little bit of a rundown of what my day would be like as a tech. So since I worked morning shifts, I had to be there every day and clock in at 6:53 a.m. I believe that's right. 6:53. Yeah, 6:53 a.m. And so then I would go into the nurse's station, and then the charge nurse would just give us a rundown or whatever, a report. And then you would meet up with the night shift tech that's about to go home, and they would give you a report on each of your patients. So then you go knock on your patient's door and you introduce yourself. If they're up, if they're sleeping, fine, you can let them sleep. So you're just going to write your name on the board, write their nurse's name on the board, change the date, and all that good stuff. And then you would just chart on them real quickly. You would just know if they were sleeping, if they were up, what position they're in, yada, yada, yada. And you would do that for each one of your patients. So when you're done with that, the next thing you would do is basically figure out who needs a bath. You want to make sure you, when you're getting a report from the night shift tech, you'll know who already had their bath, who needs one, who had their sheets changed, who still needs their sheets changed. So whatever patient didn't get a bath that night, you would go to their room and let them know that you're going to give them a bath, or at least ask them if they want a bath. If they refuse to let you bathe them, there's really nothing you can do about that. Whatever, you just move on to the next patient. But some patients are actually able to bathe themselves if they're independent, but others need more help, so you would have to do it. So then I would get my supplies and give bed baths to whatever patients need them. And keep in mind, in between the bed baths, you do have to do your rounding that I was telling you about earlier. So once you're done with the bed bath, maybe go do rounds on your patients and then go to the next patient that needs a bed bath. So basically after you finish your bed baths, the rest of your day is going to be spent basically rounding, doing your vital signs every 4 hours, and answering call lights. Alright, so now I'm just going to try to give you some advice. As you know, I was in an accelerated program, so when I talk about semesters, I'm kind of basing it off of my 4 semesters. So I would say your first semester, or if you're doing a 4-year program, maybe your first year, I wouldn't necessarily work as a tech unless you just feel very comfortable and you've already learned a lot and you just want to go ahead and get that extra experience. But during your second or third semester, I think that would be like the perfect time for you to work as a tech because you already have gotten foundations out of the way, so you know the basics. And this way you can learn a little bit more and just be on top of your game. I personally waited until my 4th semester to start working as a tech. So once I finished my preceptorship, I was like, okay, I have all this free time, let me work as a tech. Well, the problem with that was it was kind of hard finding a job. I applied to so many places and I really wanted to work as a tech to get a little bit more extra experience before I graduated since I was completely done with clinical. So I wish I would have started earlier. I wouldn't wait until the last minute to do it like I did. I really only worked for like a month and a half as a tech, which is like no time, but I did learn a lot. And the reason why I had to quit was because in my state, once you become a nurse, so once you pass the NCLEX and it's posted on the Board of Nursing website, you can no longer work as a tech because of liability issues. So when you go to work, your title is a tech, right? But you're technically a nurse because you've already passed the NCLEX. So if something happens to your patient, they're going to expect you to act as a nurse since you've already passed the NCLEX, yet your job title is a tech. So it's kind of like a conflict of interest or like a, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like liability issues. It's like, should you act as a tech or should you act as a nurse? So it really depends on what state you're in and what facility you're working at, whether or not you can continue to work as a tech once you pass the NCLEX. I've heard that some places let you continue to work as a tech for like 60 or 90 days once you pass the NCLEX, but not where I was. It really just depends on where you're working. And I've also heard that some people kind of keep it a secret of when they're taking the NCLEX and they don't tell their employers so that they can continue to work and make extra money. And I thought about that, but I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want any problems. I was like, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and have to quit like I'm supposed to and just enjoy the rest of my summer. Another recommendation that I have for you would be to try to work as a tech on a floor that you're actually interested in working on. I know a lot of places, if you work as a tech, you have a higher chance of actually getting hired there as a nurse once you do pass the NCLEX and graduate. So overall, do I recommend you working as a tech while you're in nursing school? Yes, I do. I just want to remind you that school should be your priority. You want to make sure your grades are good and that you're learning and you're not too tired. One of the reasons why I didn't work as a tech earlier in my nursing program was because most of the jobs that I saw required you to work full-time, which is 36 hours per week, and that just would not work with me being in an accelerated program. Another thing to keep in mind is you do get paid more if you work weekends and nights, just like nurses do. So if you want extra money, you can sign up for nights or weekend shifts. Another thing that I just remembered is that you can be extremely busy as a tech. So the floor that I worked on had 16 beds and we would usually have 2 techs. So that meant that each tech got 8 patients. Now, of course, if every room wasn't filled up, let's say there were only 14 patients, then each tech would get 7 patients. Now, let me tell you, oh my gosh, there were times when techs would call out, so I would have the whole floor to myself. Mind you, this is like my 3rd or 4th week working, and I'm still like trying to learn things. So I have 16 patients all by myself as a tech. It is exhausting, okay? It's really hard. It's a lot different than when you're in nursing clinical and you only have 2 patients. Having 16 patients is a lot of work, okay? But the nurses will often step up and help you out if you're the only tech, and at the end of the day, you'll be okay. You'll be tired and exhausted and busy the whole shift, but you will be okay. So I'll admit that I did kind of feel like I was regressing. I felt like at the end of my nursing program, I'm doing like I don't want to say dirty work, but that's kind of what it seems like, constantly having to clean up so much poop. Like there were days that were just like literally described as poopy days, like when literally all of your patients are just pooping themselves and you're just smelling it and constantly cleaning it up all day. I didn't really have to deal with that when I was, doing my nursing school clinical. So the job of a tech is different than what you'll be doing in your nursing school clinical. But at the end of the day, you do get a lot of great experience with it. So I do recommend you do it while you're in nursing school. Just make sure you manage your time wisely and remember that school comes first. So overall, I thought that working as a tech was a great experience, even though it was different and I felt like I should have did it earlier to help me out rather than at the end of my nursing program, because like I said, I felt like I was kind of regressing. Instead of doing nursing tasks, I was doing tech tasks. But it was a great experience, and I will say sometimes I did have difficult patients, but that just made you appreciate your sweet patients even more. Like, I still remember some of my favorite patients that I had. They were so sweet. Like, they would say things like, "Oh, I don't want you to go home. I want you to be my tech tomorrow. When are you coming back?" It always made me feel so good whenever I had like really sweet patients who would tell me how much they appreciate me. Stuff like that really does make it worth it. Like, you know, with all the poop and urine you have to deal with and the bed baths, at the end of the day, it's a rewarding job and it's so worth it because you are helping people. So basically, when you go in every day, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get the most amazing patient, if you're going to get someone that's difficult. Just remember to remain professional, collaborate with the other techs and nurses, and you'll be fine. So if you're thinking about working as a tech while in nursing school, I say go for it. I think that it'll be a great experience for you. I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover. I hope I didn't leave anything out. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And as I always say, have a lovely day.